I can see that people are joining us, and I appreciate you tuning in. Right now, Votorama is going on in the Senate, so understand if you've got some split screens on at home as we're all waiting to see what happens. But I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor of Lincoln Square, and coming back to the show is Edwin Eisendrath. He's from Chicago, just like me, former CEO of the Chicago Sun-Times, former Chicago alderman, and longtime all-around good guy in Democratic politics. We're going to break down the latest with Trump's budget bill, what he calls the One Beautiful Bill. Some of the rest of us call it the MAGA Murder Budget, among other things, as well as hopefully getting in a little bit about foreign policy and some other things that happened over the weekend. Because even though it's summer, none of us get a break. But thank you so much for coming back. I appreciate it, Edwin.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. I think this is great what you do, Susan. Really great.
Oh, it's so much fun. And I love being on your radio show too in Chicago. So I'm glad that we can, continue to do this. I know that we get such great feedback for the columns that you write for us. And, when you came and visited us a couple weeks ago. So glad to have you here. Um, Unfortunately, I wish it were better circumstances because, as we know, a lot of Republicans who said they, had great concerns, like Lisa Murkowski in Alaska, suddenly got religion as they got a bunch of carve outs. And now the bill passed a crucial hurdle to be debated. Democrats slowed it down by forcing it to be read on the floor, which I'm sure was the first time that most people were hearing exactly what was in the bill. And now the game plan for Republicans is just trying to jam this through today. So, what are your overall thoughts on what we're dealing with, and just how bad this bill is?
Okay, this bill turns Project 2025 into the law of the land. This bill is class warfare by billionaires against everyone else. It is uh, a bill that locks in a police state and gives Donald Trump the keys to the jail. I mean, let's just look. They're cutting the National Institute of Health by 20 billion, the CDC by 4 billion, cancer research by 3 billion, food programs by 30 billion, education by 12 billion. That is a lot of money, right? Why?
Yeah.
To create an internal gulag, they're going to spend $45 billion on ICE. I mean, they already, I mean, we've seen what they do with the money they have, and it's appalling.
Right.
$45 lets them become the biggest prison system in American history and lock people up and throw away the keys. And because of the Supreme Court, who we should talk about just this week, said the president can do whatever he wants, and we can't. No judge can stop him, and maybe we can if we hear the case some point, but no one else has the authority to stop him. This is a police state law. Um,
Right.
one that says to billionaires, we are going to take money from the rest of the country for you. And just picture this, right? This week we saw Jeff Bezos and 90 of his best friends in their private jets fly
Hmm.
to Venice, Italy, take over that beautiful city for his own wedding, right? These tax cuts mean we taxpayers will pay for his wedding. That is
Which is insane.
disgusting. It's
It's
disgusting. And I think every American should, even today, get on the phone, call their members of Congress, and tell them if they do this thing, they are all going to be out, 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 out. And,
right.
and by the way, pardon me for this, but these billionaires who, if anybody says they should pay they should pay a higher tax to go, oh, class warfare. Well, if they've declared war on us, and they better be ready because they won't be in power forever. They better be ready for a return to the 90% marginal tax rate, for a real inheritance tax in America, and an end to their loopholes. And by the way, enough IRS agents to go after them because
Right.
you know what? We're not going to put up with it anymore.
Right. Yeah, we do talk a lot about class warfare. But I mean, that's exactly what this bill is. It's trying to undo the gains from the Biden administration, where the poor and middle class started to make some gains, which was crucial after the pandemic when a lot of people lost ground. But not only are we undoing that, but I mean, this is just the largest transfer of wealth that, we've seen in decades. And it's all going from, those of us who are middle class and below and flowing to the top. And I'm not talking about, people who make a couple $100,000 a year, which is great money. But, people who make tens upon tens of millions of billions of dollars, people who literally will not notice, a couple more zeros on their bank account.
Right.
But those are the big winners of this bill. As you said, the ICE police state, and you were referring to that very crucial Supreme Court decision on Friday, the CASA decision. And no, they didn't rule on the merits in terms of birthright citizenship, even though Trump lied and said they did. But they did something that was extremely damaging and wide ranging by basically stopping the ability of lower court judges to stop Trump.
That's right.
And that goes way beyond just this decision.
That's right. They've made his executive orders the law of the land until such time as they see fit to say maybe they're not. And that is a complete revision of how we normally have our separation of powers. It's a complete revision of jurisprudence in America, all to empower this dictator. And it
Right.
is unacceptable, and it should be unacceptable for any American. And you said he wants to undo what the Biden administration did. Let's be clear. Biden's economic stewardship led to economic growth in every single quarter he was president. And
Hmm.
we've seen the economy shrink now in the first quarter of this year because of Trump's tariffs and his inability for anybody to know what the rules are going to be in a week because it's always
Hmm.
so no one's going to invest here. I mean, this is a really terrible bill and
Right.
really terrible president. I guess they go together. But why everybody in Congress wants to commit political suicide for him is beyond me because this
Right.
is political suicide for every one of them because we won't forget. One more thing,
Hmm.
it isn't Biden's economic progress he wants to undo, it's FDR's. He wants
Yes.
he wants to go all the way back and say, "Workers, forget it. You go back, work in the stockyards, you can lose a hand in your business. We don't care. You're a child, go work in the factories in Iowa." That's what he wants in the meat plants. They don't
Right.
about Americans. They don't care about America.
Yeah.
Sell off our private lands, for gosh sakes. Our public lands, I mean. I didn't put them.
Which was one provision that has not made it into the final bill because there was such an outcry. This was a big thing for Mike Lee, the
Yeah.
senator from Utah, but don't think that they're not going to try again.
Well, it just tells you who they are, right?
Right.
They and their friends to control everything on the theory that if they make the billionaires richer, those billionaires will buy them their seats forever. But
Right.
America have something to say about this. As Pat Buchanan used to say on the other side, we are going to take our pitchforks and we are going out storming the castle gates.
Yeah, I mean, the provisions in this bill, this is not the kind of like nitty gritty governance that people don't notice. When all of a sudden your electric bill, goes sky high this winter, you're going to notice that when, even if you're not on Medicaid, there are many cuts to healthcare that go way beyond just folks who are actually on that program because this has an impact on rural hospitals. I know that they've been trying to do these carve outs to win votes. I mean, John Thune is out there just handing out carve outs like candy. Just literally buying votes on the floor. I mean, there's nothing subtle about this. But don't think that all of a sudden hospitals are safe. And for those of us who have health insurance on the private market, we're going to see our healthcare costs skyrocket because, you can't just damage $1 trillion part, and take out $1 trillion out of Medicaid and start messing with the Affordable Care Act and think that the entire, healthcare system isn't going to be badly damaged. It's a huge domino effect. And, people have been talking about for years all the shortcomings with our healthcare system even after Obamacare passed. And that's true. We still have millions of people who are uninsured. But this takes us way in the other direction. I mean, you are absolutely correct. This is trying to undo the Great Society of LBJ. This is going back to FDR. Anything that is part of a modern social safety net, things that we all took for granted, Social Security, Medicare, on and on. This is what they've been hell bent on destroying. And Trump is giving the far right everything that they want. And he gets something really important out of it. Not only do you have the Supreme Court giving him carte blanche, but as you pointed out in a column that was extremely well shared by our readers, this codifies Project 2025 into law. All of his executive orders, what he says goes. He is the king. This is not what America is. This is what we fought the war over in 1776. And he single handedly is rewriting and shredding the Constitution with this budget bill. I mean, this is extremely sweeping. You and I, we've read a lot of legislation. We've covered a lot of things. I mean, this is as far reaching as I have ever seen a piece of legislation.
It's 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 absolutely rewrites the way our country functions. The Let me back up one step about the big cuts to Medicaid. Most people don't know they're on it because every state takes that money and designs their own program with its own name, right? So
Right.
people, well, don't think they're on Medicaid. They think they're on whatever the name of the program is in the
We're
state.
Healthy Michigan in Michigan.
Right.
That doesn't sound like Medicaid. That sounds like something great. And
So
why would
people,
anyone want us to be unhealthy?
yes, and when all that stuff disappears, they're going to go, well, wait a minute, why you? That's Michigan's fault, and we have to be ready to say, I'm sorry, you put this criminal in office, and this is what happens. This is on him. There's no one else to blame. He and his cronies in Congress, and they are going after all of these social safety net things that have been put in place. The Supreme Court, at the same time, is going after all of the civil rights that were gained in the same period. So,
Yes.
really talking about an enormous rollback of a century of progress in America. Um, and 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 the excuse for it was that during the last few years, we really have left lots of people behind by letting all that wealth go to the top and not sharing it with the people who've earned it. And that was, both parties were guilty of that for a while.
Mhm.
But right now, Trump has doubled down on it and says, you know what, that's a feature, not a flaw. And it is a terrible flaw. He thinks he's going to buy himself a little oligarchy, and we aren't going to let it happen. Not
No.
happen.
No. And, I thought it was really interesting that Tom Tillis decided just to put his chips all in the middle of the table, say, I'm not running for reelection, by the way. They're trying to save the worst of the cuts until after the election because they think that you're too dumb to figure this out and it'll be too late. But he let the cat out of the bag before this thing got passed. And so for whatever flaws he has, and believe me, there are many, and those of you who live in North Carolina know
Know
far
them
better than
well.
anyone else.
Yeah.
But he did us all a favor by, telling us exactly what some of their tricks are.
And he
And so
said,
we can be ready and we can fight back.
it's he's still trying to curry favor with these guys. And he said, look, it's a broken promise. Donald Trump is, this is a broken promise. He said he wouldn't take health care away from people. He's taking health care away from people. And remember, this isn't new. They came within one John McCain vote of canceling the ACA the first time he was president. And then he,
Back in 2018.
I will give you we have a new plan. It's ready to go. It's ready to go. You'll have it in 2 weeks. And it's been 6 years since he said, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, 6 years since he said it. And we don't have that plan. Right. So he's a liar and a danger. And this bill, I swear they're gonna pass something and it's gonna be terrible, but we might be able still to make it less terrible. But you have to call up. Everybody's got to call and put as much pressure on as possible.
Right.
Maybe we can get Lisa Murkowski to back off, maybe. But you know what? We're gonna win a Senate seat in North Carolina now. We're gonna finally win one in Maine now.
with
Um,
Susan Collins, who
absolutely,
folded again.
she can
You can set
turn
your watch
all the
by
way
it.
to wherever she comes from. But, "Oh, I'm so concerned." Yeah,
She's
well,
always
not
concerned.
oh, she isn't.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about who are the absolute most vulnerable senators out there for the 26th cycle.
I don't know. She is, certainly.
Yes.
I think Murkowski has said if the Democrats win, she'll caucus with them, which would be a flip, y
Yes.
or an important one. Um, and I don't know that I just don't know right now. We'll see how people react to this week. I think that's a better question for next week.
Yeah.
There certainly are a bunch of vulnerable House seats. I mean, I'm very confident we'll win the House back, provided that we aren't in a war about who gets seated. And I expect them to say, "Oh, they cheated. You can't seat anybody who won in Michigan because they didn't follow my executive order that says women can't vote if they have a different name than the one that was on their birth certificate." I mean, that's what
Right.
Trump's executive order says, unless
Right.
they jump through hoops to re to prove that they are who they were born as.
Right.
Uh, uh, and they will claim your vote was illegal because that's what they do, right?
Right. Um, and so, I, I'm also floored because you not only have this budget bill, but the economy is not doing, that great to begin with because we have, Trump's tariffs. And then, he says, oh, we're renegotiating. And, it creates all this uncertainty. And meanwhile, you have retailers like Walmart, they're already jacking up prices anyway because, their job is to make a profit. So, prices were supposed to go down. That was one of the big things that Trump tried to sell us on. We've seen that that's not happening. Um, and on top of it, now cost of living expenses are just going to soar between electricity and healthcare. And so, you know, Trump's biggest selling point has always been I'm a businessman. I know how to take care of the economy. Everything will be better under me. And somehow, people kind of give him a pass on what happened in his last year of his last presidency because it was like, oh, well, it was COVID, so it's not his fault. Now we're seeing, the same destructive patterns. So we have that going on. And again, I can't see how people are not going to notice that. But that seems to be the bet that, like, really, he's playing us all for rubes. That you're too dumb to know what I'm really doing. You're somehow not going to notice when all of a sudden, after all your bills are done, you have half as much money as you did the year before. That just seems to be incredible arrogance. And generally, when you're trying to win elections, that's not really the best posture to strike. So I mean, this bill is unpopular. We know that. Do you think that he's going to get away with this? Um, do you think people are really going to forget by 2026, by the midterms? Because I just have a hard time believing that.
Here's something that we Democrats aren't good at, and we need to be. We need to be able to speak to the true rage of Americans. And they are already outraged. And they were angry to begin with. Everybody was ornery in the last election. They are going to
Right.
be so angry about what our government has done to them. And we have to be able to say, that's them. That is Donald Trump and his cronies 100%. We told you. We tried to stop it. You better help us. We can attempt to rebuild from this fiasco, but it's 100% their fault. And here's why it's their fault. And lay it out. They took your money. They gave it to Jeff Bezos to pay for his wedding. They gutted your health care. They took food out of the mouth of babies. By the way, that cancer you have would have been cured, but they got rid of the research and they were on the cusp of fixing this problem. You know what? I mean, you could go down the list, and we should go down the list. We should
Right.
sit outside of a grocery store during a salmonella outbreak and say, "Do you know they're not inspecting the food anymore?" I mean, this is who they are, and
Yeah.
and so your question, will he be held to account for this? It depends on whether we are going to whether on our side, we are willing to hold them to account. This isn't what we do well. We don't like the blame game so much. We like to talk
Mhm.
about where we're going. But this time we had better point the fingers and say, this felon should never have been in the White House. None of this would have happened if America had put him in the prison he belongs in. And instead, he has damaged our country at home and abroad in ways that are incalculable.
Right.
Oh my gosh, we're going to peace on day one. The slaughter in the Mideast continues.
Yeah.
People are lining up for food and getting shot. And that, I mean, even Israel is saying we now have to look at this, at what's going on over there, because our troops are tired and young, and now they're doing things they shouldn't do. And yesterday we saw the biggest bombing raid on Kiev that we've seen in this entire war, because his friend Vladimir is sticking his thumb in Trump's nose, saying, "Yeah, you were going to call me and we're going to peace on day one. Get us guess again."
Yeah.
Loser. He's the biggest loser. He's not a great businessman. The one thing he's good at is lining his own pocket with grift.
Right. Yeah, and he promised that all of our problems were going away on day one. He made such a big deal about, I've never gotten us into a war, but he basically, started bombing Iran just because he could.
And
And with
let's just talk about that for one
yeah.
second. Netanyahu went on TV on the 16th and said, "We have taken out Iran's nuclear capability. It's going to be years and years and years before they can get a bomb." 6 days later, Donald Trump says, "Oh, I have to bomb Iran." Right?
Mhm.
6 days after the Israelis said
Right.
they're not a threat anymore from this. So you use your own head and figure out why he did it. Oh my gosh, they're going to win a war and I'm not part of it. I'm not the most
Right.
guy in the world. For that, I'm going to use America's most secret and powerful weapons just because I need to be in the spotlight. Oh, it's immoral in every possible way.
And also, his little birthday parade with the military was a flop, and so he was clearly smarting from that as well.
I actually liked it. I mean, I know I shouldn't say that, but I watched some of it. I thought it was boring. It was
Mhm.
it was not what he wanted, but it
No.
was kinda interesting, the history of these different units and the history of
That
America.
right.
I actually
That
thought
part was interesting. The theatrics, the Hitler-esque photos that, the official White House photographer put
Yeah,
out. I could do without that.
me too.
Um, but yeah, I mean, look, we've had military parades when the military has been centered, like after we were, in Iraq to celebrate what they did. And you can debate whether or not,
Wait,
they should have been there to begin with.
just
And
wait.
we have and
It
we
was
should, but they were at the center, not a man baby president. And so I do want to talk a little bit. You raised, the conflict um in Ukraine, and it really has fallen off people's, radar. And the mainstream media is certainly, um bears a big responsibility for that. And, really, it's people like Tim Mack, former NPR reporter who is out there in Ukraine with a lot of his colleagues on the ground who are still reporting things. They're the people that we have to be grateful for because, that doesn't even make CNN anymore. But because our attention is diverted, you can bet that Putin is taking full advantage. I mean, the savagery of what he is doing there is incredible, and we've seen what Israel is doing in Gaza for the same reason, because they know that the U.S. is now on the side of butchers instead of on the side of what's right. And again, we can talk about mistakes that Democratic and Republican presidents have made with foreign policy and with wars, and that is a fair debate. But there's a huge difference between that and our current president who is saying, yeah, I really like the genocide that these people are committing against people who are defenseless. That's a whole other ballgame. We're the bad guys, and that is not what America is supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, these are all complicated. I mean, the slaughter in Gaza is probably not genocide, but I'm sure there are war crimes. I mean, I do think that Bibi Netanyahu and the now assassinated Yair Sinwar, Sinwar, arrogance and ambition and greed had him start this war with his
Mhm.
attack on October 7th, and ambition and greed let Bibi Netanyahu carry it out in the way he has. Both there's so much blame on both sides over there, and no one is over there trying to make peace. Everyone's
No,
over there to increase their piece of the pie, and that is disgusting. And our
right.
president could have been a force for peace, decided not to be. Not there, and certainly not in Ukraine, where his idea of peace was to take a meeting in the White House with Vladimir Zelensky and treat him like a dog.
Yes.
It was just disgusting. I was sick watching it. That's not how you get peace. To
No.
take a guy whose country was invaded and yell at him and then kick him out of the White House. I mean, just right of you, and nothing is ever never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, in World War II, Churchill actually lived in the White House for a while when he was trying to get America to come. It would be the equivalent of FDR saying to Churchill, "You're a terrible guy. Get on the next boat. You're not welcome here. We don't want you." I mean, and then we're coming up on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Th- This is like we're celebrating the fact that we. I wish people would read the Declaration of Independence and really read it, not just the part that says you know, all are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights, but the crimes that we were actually going to war because of. Because
Mhm.
this list of crimes that the king committed against the Americans is absolutely parallel to the list of crimes Donald Trump has committed. He has sent troops into our cities to take people off our streets.
Right.
That's it, right? That's in the Declaration of Independence. This is what Donald Trump is doing. So on the 4th of July, let's have a new rebirth of freedom and commit ourselves to be rid of this MAGA monopoly on power that is not just in the federal government, but in state after state saying, well, you can't read these books. How dare you read these books? Or, of course you're going to pray to our God in school, not yours. We're going to tell you who to pray to
Right.
in schools. I mean, this is a perversion of American history. It's a abandonment of the Declaration of Independence, and we should recommit because those are pretty good causes. They're
Absolutely.
committed to the three-fifths clause, and, I'm not doing that anymore, right? We're done with that.
Right. But right now Trump is trying to get rid of the 14th Amendment with birthright citizenship. I mean, trying to roll back we're talking about going back to FDR. That's, going back before the Civil War. That's where we're at right now. That
Yeah.
that is how serious the fight is.
Look, John Roberts
Um,
done this for him. John Ro
yes.
I mean, in addition to reading the Declaration of Independence, my gosh, read the dissents that the women on the Supreme Court have written in the last year. They're
Right.
beautiful. They stand on American values and American history squarely, and they call out the failings of John Roberts and you know, his friends on the right in that court for undermining American democracy, for undermining American values, for throwing our rights in the ash can, and for empowering this dictator. They're
Yes.
using their words.
Yes. Well, it's very difficult to find hope in these hours. It really is. And I know that we all feel that way. Um, I was really struck by something over the weekend. One of Trump's idols, Viktor Orban, obviously has turned Hungary into a dictatorship and is probably the closest um, example of what Trump wants to bring here to America. And we're inching ever closer with this budget bill. But there was something remarkable that happened in Budapest over the weekend. Orban has, declared that you can't celebrate, Gay Pride Month there. That's offensive to the state and to him, and that sounds very familiar to those of us here. But you just saw thousands of people pour into the streets in a dictatorship where, their lives are literally at risk. And they said, no, enough. And not only were they fighting for LGBTQ rights, but they were fighting for freedom for everyone, for, the country that they lost. And they were willing to stand up to a dictator to do that. And we're not at the point where our rights have been completely stripped from us, not even close. As horrible as things are, you saw with the No Kings protest with millions of people showing up in small towns and big cities across the country. And so to me, if they're willing to put their lives on the line over in Hungary, that's an inspiration for what we can do here before we get that far down the line.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna be that far down the line, after this bill. This bill includes money for facial recognition software for ICE, so they can point their phone at you and say, "Oh, my phone says I should arrest you." I mean, that
Right. Meanwhile, they're in masks, so we have no idea who they are, if they're just some J6 thug with no training, which is the mark of secret police, that we've seen in, autocracies across the world.
yeah. Well, but your example, which is a great one of what just happened in Hungary, has happened around the world over time. Even dictators are afraid of their people.
Yes.
Right? And that's why they keep, trying to radicalize trying to say there's an enemy, there's an enemy, there's an enemy, because that's how they keep people from thinking about themselves and thinking about their neighbors, because they have afraid of some moral panic. And Republicans have been really good at that. But we have to think about our neighbors and our communities. And if we do that, we'll stand up. And I mean, uh, all over the world, dictators are afraid of their people. They really
Yes.
and they better be afraid of us, because you know what? We are not giving up our sovereignty. I've always said, when people said America, has a peaceful transition of power every 4 years,
Mhm.
Susan, I've always thought we've never had a transition of power because it's always been ours. The
Mhm.
first time we had a transition of power was when we gave it away to Donald Trump. Because, like, we pick our leaders. The power is
Mhm.
ours to do that, or at least it has been. But creating this police state, which this bill will do, is gonna make that a lot harder, in the next couple of years. We will still fight for it. We will still st
Yes.
And this weekend, I was not depressed because the Pride Parade in Chicago was such a celebration of joy for so many people, determined not to have the clock turned back,
Mhm.
determined not to let this court get a shot at taking gay marriage and saying that's illegal, or interracial marriage and making that illegal. Two things they want to do, by the
Right.
way. Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
And that joy is so important, because and that joy comes from all of us and being together and what we believe in collectively, because we are the majority in this country. And I feel good each and every day that I get up, and I work here at Lincoln Square because we do have a community here. And I know that these are communities that you build, in Chicago and beyond. And you have been for decades, Edwin. And I so appreciate that, because that's what this moment demands, is for those of us who can stand up to do that, and for us all to, continue to build our community and to make it bigger, to, invite those folks who may have voted for Trump last time because, hey, they didn't like the cost of living. They thought they needed change. Now they realize that, stuff is still expensive and all of a sudden a lot more is on the line. That's great. We need every person to come together. This is a time, not for litmus tests, for us all to fight this big fight, and then we can get back to the smaller fights, when things are not as dire.
Yeah,
And so I really appreciate you being
I
here because these discussions are so important.
Yep, and I think we said this last time. Right now, proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with anyone who's willing to stand in this fight, right?
Yes.
And we disagree about all kinds of things. This fight for our future is gonna get a lot harder this week if they pass this bill, but we're still gonna do it.
It's going to get harder, but we can't afford to stop. And we do know that Trump is afraid of all of us, of his
Of us.
own people, as he thinks of us, which is why he wants us to, have less of a voice, less rights. He wants to empower ICE so that they can round up not just the worst of the worst. They're not even doing that now, but people, who disagree with him. They want the right to do that because he needs to be able to control us. That's the only way that autocrats stay in power. So we have the advantage of a lot of historical examples. History is long and a good teacher. But like anything else, the autocracy that Donald Trump wants us to live under is uniquely American. And it comes in one of Trump's red hats because it always has to be branded. But you know, I really think that one of the best things that we can do is savor those moments like over the weekend when we can just be ourselves, catch up with old friends, celebrate the hard fought rights like gay marriage. And, I just invite you that if you have not become a member yet of Lincoln Square, please, you can be a paid member. You can try it out as a free member, but this is genuinely a community. This is a resource for all of us. And so um, this is where people who really care about what you care about, like Edwin and I, where we come together and we're trying to build something better, not just go back to how things were, but really build something better for the future. And so I appreciate you being here. I know we'll all be watching what happens in the Senate as they probably go very late over this terrible bill. Um, it's not too late. Call your senators. Um, on so many of our stories, we put the number up, we put the link up. Whether your senator is a Democrat or Republican, they need to hear from you.
Yep,
And I think that you'll be very happy to know that we're going to have Edwin stop by here a lot more often because I think we personally have a lot of fun with these discussions.
we do.
And you're and if you have any questions for us next time around, feel free to put them in the chat and we will try and get around to them.
Great. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. And Edwin, can you tell us a little bit about where people can find you and your radio show?
I do a radio show every Saturday on WCPT 820. You could get it online if you're not live here in the Chicago area. I write a Substack blog called It's the Democracy Stupid, and you can always follow my stuff there. And I am on Blue Sky. Just search for Eisendrath. It's kind of easy. Um, I'll see you there.
Great. Thank you so much.
You bet. Bye.